So good evening, everybody. My name is Rose Jansen, and I'm with the Academy of Science St. Louis, and we're very pleased to partner with the St. Louis Zoo to bring you Conservation Conversations, generously underwritten by Cooper Busman. A number of you are probably Academy members and friends, and for those of you who aren't familiar with us, I'm going to take just a moment to tell you a little bit about who we are. We're an independent science organization. We've been around since 1856, so for a very long time. And we've been connecting science in the community since then, and it's our long-standing mission to promote the public understanding of science and inspire the next generation of scientists and science advocates. We continue to celebrate more than 150 years of community service by offering a very broad range of free and low-cost public science seminars and trips and tours that celebrate science at venues throughout the metropolitan area and throughout the region. And for more information on upcoming events, you can visit our website at academyofsciencestl.org. You may also visit us on Facebook or Twitter or pick up some of our literature that is out at the visitors desk just outside the auditorium. If you want to receive e-notification of upcoming Academy and St. Louis Zoo public lectures and events, there will be an e-news sign-up sheet out at the visitors desk and some that will make their way around the audience this evening. If you're a student who needs to verify your attendance, you can come see me after tonight's Q&A session. I do want to mention some upcoming events you might have an interest in attending. As many of you know, the Academy and Zoo partner to bring you the long-running and popular science seminar series on current and trending topics in science, the first of which many of you may have attended on August 29 when we had Honduran bird guide and author Robert Gallardo speaking on Birds Behind the Banana Republic, Avian Conservation in Honduras. So our second seminar in this series is Here in the Living World on Wednesday evening, October 10 at 7:30 p.m. And unfortunately, we had some presenters with scheduling issues, so we're not quite lined up for the 10th yet. I expect that to happen sometime this week, so please continue to check the Academy website. And if you sign up for our e-news this evening, we'll make sure you receive notice once we have the 10th scheduled. Additional upcoming seminars in the series include seminars on African women in agricultural research and development on November 7, and in partnership with Novus International. African Women in Agricultural Research and Development is an ongoing project of the Gender and Diversity Program of the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research. It's funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the U.S. Agency for International Development and offers two-year fellowships to women scientists from Africa who are already working closely with the rural poor on tackling issues of poverty and hunger. On December 12, Webster University professor and author Dr. Al Marcella talks about cyber forensics and investigation, and his latest book will be available for signing and purchase by the author that evening, Cyber Forensics from Data to Digital Evidence. On February 6th, Academy Fellow and Washington University James S. McDonald Distinguished University Professor Dr. Ray Arvison will offer updates on the Mars rover missions. Dr. Arvison served as a Mars Exploration Rover Mission Deputy Principal Investigator for both Spirit and Opportunity, and he was selected by NASA to be a participating scientist on the Mars Science Laboratory, a mission that just recently landed Curiosity. He'll also talk about his work on the Curiosity team to learn about Martian soils. In March, and in partnership with the Alaska Wilderness League, award-winning nature photographer and author Florian Scholz will be here to talk about To the Arctic, bringing remote yet vibrant land to life, and copies of the official companion book to the IMAX film To the Arctic will be available for purchase and signing that evening. And in April, we have Monsanto Company B Logic's commercial lead and founding member of the Colony Collapse Disorder Working Group and science advisor for the project Apis mellifera, Dr. Jerry Hayes. He'll be here to talk about biologics. That's a long-term research effort to address the health of honeybees. These will all be up on our website within the next couple days, and right now you can find information on additional upcoming fall and winter science opportunities, talks, trips, and tours on our website. And I do want to just mention very briefly, our friend and partner, the St. Louis Science Center, has a wildlife rescue exhibition that will be on display at the center in October. I have some coupons up here. If you have an interest, you can come see me after the Q&A session. They also have a companion IMAX film, Born to be Wild, for which I also have some coupons. So again, come see me following tonight's Q&A if you have an interest in either of those. And with that said, I'd like to introduce Martha Fisher. She is the zoo's curator of mammals, and she's going to introduce tonight's speaker.
Thanks, Rose. There's a lot of really exciting talks coming up in the very near future. I've got a couple of more to add to the list that Rose just gave to us. Some of these are specifically related to the St. Louis Zoo and may interest some of you. We've got a special lunchtime lecture on October 9th. Lori Marker from the Cheetah Conservation Fund will be giving a talk here in this room. Again, that's October 9th at noon. And then October 15th, there will be a talk given by Cricket Sands and David Morgan called The Truth About Chimpanzees. That's an evening lecture on October 15th. October 18th, we have another cheetah lecture given by Mary Wickstra and Cosmos Wambua from the Action for Cheetahs in Kenya. And then October 23rd, you can come and hear about tracking turtles from the volcanoes of the Galapagos to Tyson to downtown St. Louis, and that will be given by Dr. Stephen Blake. I have some other talks here. I'm not going to read through all of them, but if you're interested in hearing about some of the other lectures that are coming up between now and the end of the year, I'm more than happy to share that with you. But I know why you all came here tonight, and I have the honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Kate Evans. She will be speaking with us tonight about African elephants. Those of you who are familiar with the St. Louis Zoo know that we have a family of Asian elephants here at the zoo, and so you're probably kind of scratching your head and wondering why we've invited an African elephant specialist to come here and speak to us about her work. And I think, actually, I'm really glad to have a captive audience because it's a really good opportunity for me to highlight for everyone how the St. Louis Zoo is concerned about the situation for both Asian elephants and African elephants, and I think sometimes, maybe people don't understand that. So our 12 Wild Care Institute centers tend to get most of the press about the zoo's conservation work, and for good reason. We do a lot of work all the way around the world and here in Missouri. So not surprisingly, the cheetahs and the Grevy zebras and the penguins and even the burying beetles tend to get a lot of the spotlight. But also, since the inception of the Wild Care Institute, the St. Louis Zoo has been quietly providing support to elephant conservation, both for Asian and African elephants. And in the time that Wild Care Institute has been active, we have provided nearly $1 million to conservation for elephants worldwide, and I think that's a pretty impressive number. We've supported work through the International Elephant Foundation, through the Northern Rangelands Trust, and through a variety of other conservation partners in both Asia and Africa. I think it's very appropriate to say that the St. Louis Zoo shares a common vision with our elephant partners around the world, both elephant care colleagues at other zoos, elephant conservationists from Africa and Asia, and that vision includes elephants in the world's future forever, both in zoos and in the wild. And I think you probably are all here tonight because you also share that vision. I think we're going to hear quite a bit about African elephants this evening, so I'm going to get on with introducing Kate so that she can talk about her very exciting work. Dr. Kate Evans began working with elephants a decade ago when doing her research for her Ph.D. Building upon that research, in 2007, Dr. Evans founded Elephants for Africa, a charity that is registered in England and in Wales. And this charity is dedicated to elephant conservation through research and education. Tonight's talk will be about conservation of the African elephant, about its current status in the wild, and about Elephant for Africa's research on male elephants and why it is so important that we understand male elephants both in situ and ex situ, for both in situ and ex situ conservation. Dr. Evans will also discuss her organization's education programs focusing on local students at the primary and postgraduate level. Kate, please help me welcome Kate.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thanks for a wonderful introduction. It's a real privilege to be here and be able to discuss some of our work that we're carrying out in Botswana, which is our main area of research at the moment. I'm hoping the colour will come back to the front in a minute. Otherwise, it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure what's happened there. It's gone blue. I'm getting the blue screen of death, which is never a good thing. I can ad-lib. I'm fairly good at this. I think Martha gave a really good introduction of what I'm wanting to cover this evening in the short time that we have. But it will be not only about elephants, but also my journey, how I became an elephant researcher and why. And then I'm going to just briefly discuss some of the conservation issues facing the African elephant. And these are very, very much applicable to the Asian elephants, which I know you're home to 11 here. Hopefully one on the way, I believe, I let this evening. And then Elephants for Africa, what we're doing with research and education. Oh, I tell you what's happened, the cable's fallen off. It's my end. It's a good job I'm not a technical expert, isn't it? There we go, important. Let's see if that comes back to life now. Right, try and keep that up there. Sorry about that. It doesn't want to screw it. Okay. Some of our research findings, specifically on male elephants, that's my area of interest. And then support, how you would like to support us or can support us, not just financially, there are many other ways that you can help the situation for both Asian and African elephants. So for me, it all began here. I had a very up-close encounter, and very personal encounter with an Asian elephant. So the Asian elephants do get some spotlight this evening. I had a very fortunate and privileged upbringing. I got to see much of the world. So I had a very interesting, cultural, diverse upbringing. And part of that childhood was spent in Pakistan, where I had the opportunity to visit Sri Lanka. And I got to meet this Asian elephant in an elephant orphanage. And one particular elephant, it wasn't this one, it was a much smaller one that had just lost its mother, had become an orphan, and suddenly his journey had changed completely. From an elephant that was going to be brought up in the close-knit community of other elephants, suddenly it was going to be loved and cared for by humans, a very different journey for that particular elephant. And it had a profound effect on me. I'm 7. That's me in the very attractive little dress there, the socks and sandal combination, thanks Mum, and my brother there as well. It had a hugely profound effect on me, and as any 7-year-old would, I made a promise to that elephant that I would try and rectify the solution. I didn't think it was fair that elephants were having such a hard time of it, and that was over 20 years, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how many years. It was a long time ago. Oh, I've told you. I've put the date up there. What an error. I've told you how old I am. Oh, damn, I'll have to get rid of that. So a long time ago, that was the day I decided I was going to be an elephant researcher. So from that day, my journey was pretty much defined. And as we all know, an elephant never forgets. So once I'd made that promise, I figured I couldn't really get out of the deal. So from those humble beginnings, I wasn't a great academic at school. In fact, I really struggled academically, which sounds ridiculous now. But I guess for me, once I'd found my passion and once I'd found what I was really interested in, learning actually became a lot easier, and I was able to focus and get where I wanted to be. So I scraped through my A-levels, which is our kind of school graduation in the UK, and managed to get on a university course to study zoology. And after 3 years of my degree, I really had enough of academia by then. I went out to save the world as a 21-year-old and save all the elephants and, you know, make the world a better place. Little did I know that whilst I had the theory of a degree, there's a lot more that goes into being a field biologist and a conservationist. A lot more experience comes on board. I didn't even know if I could live in the middle of the bush in a tent with lions and elephants and all the rest of it. So I did lots of volunteer work, which made me, enabled me to see incredible parts of the world, particularly in southern Africa, and experience and learn from other conservationists, and helped me develop to the scientists and conservationists that I'm trying to be today. A quick bio. My first encounter was with meerkats up there for my honours degree. Very cute. We all know meerkats. I'm sure you've all seen the films. Very endearing. And then through hippos up in the Okavango Delta in Botswana, the insects and also ecotourism in Namibia here, these two ones here, and also some geckos up in Namibia. Then up to Zimbabwe, looking at the conflict situation with elephants, up in an area on the escarpment. So we didn't actually see any of the elephants. They're very, very elusive. They come down into the flatter areas, the crop areas at night time to feed. So we were tracking them through VHF and also working with the communities to try and get some solutions. And then got involved with an expedition company, budding young scientists coming out and doing community work as well as research. And then finally, I realized that perhaps more academic achievements would help me live my dream. So I decided to go back to university and I did a master's on lions. All sounds very glamorous. Lions are very regal beings. But unfortunately, I chose to do my master's on lion parasitology. So worms, intestinal worms. Intestinal worms come out in their dung. So I spent a year collecting lion dung. It's revolting. If any of you have got cats or dogs, times that by about 1,000 and you'll know what I'm talking about. But it is really interesting. I've always been fascinated by parasitology and the co-evolution of these species. And I got to spend a year with lions, so it wasn't too bad. And then finally, my journey took me back to Botswana and to the elephants. And I became more and more involved with elephants. Sorry about the changing in the... can you hear me at the back okay? Yeah, okay, good. Finally to the elephants. When 20 years after I made that promise to the elephant, I found myself in the Okavango Delta in Botswana, living the dream ultimately and spending time with elephants and wanting to learn as much as I could from them so that I could help conservation both in situ and ex situ of the African elephant in particular. So my life with elephants began all that time ago and continues to this day. And I feel very privileged to be able to see that I am living my dream and I am spending time with elephants and learning from them and hopefully contributing to their conservation. Which brings me on to the conservation issues of the African elephant. And I say I'm focusing on African, but it's very, very much applicable to the Asian elephant as well. So here we have a sort of mind map. And the four main aspects affecting elephant conservation. So habitat loss and fragmentation. Elephants are large, they need space, and fundamentally they're running out of space. Human-elephant conflict, very much linked to habitat loss and fragmentation, but also increased cultivation in much of Africa and of course in Asia. Illegal killing of elephants, which is very much on the increase, and I'll touch a little bit more on that in a minute. And then legal population control. There's many countries, particularly in the southern areas of their range, South Africa in particular, small game reserves where deem they have too many elephants. So how do they deal with an overpopulation? And then going through this mind map, just going to take one example, habitat loss and fragmentation. Well, what affects habitat loss and fragmentation? These three fundamental things, human tolerance for wildlife is decreasing globally, not just in Africa, it's all over the world. In the UK, there's a group that would like to reintroduce wolves and beavers, for examples. But it's very much, well, that's lovely, but really not in my backyard. I don't want them there. So the human tolerance for wildlife globally is very much on the decrease. Climate change and human encroachment. So climate change, other things that affect climate change or are affected by climate change is changing habitats. So here we are, we've very generous humans, we've designated lovely wildlife areas and national parks, but over time, it's an ecosystem and ecosystems change. And what happens when the change to such a degree that they can't sustain the African elephant? Well, they're going to have to move somewhere. And unfortunately, that somewhere is where humans live. And we're going to probably see an increase in conflict. And then effective use of natural resources can have a positive effect on climate change. So if we limit the use of natural resources such as wood in these certain areas, we could perhaps enable these ecosystems to be sustainable for a much longer period. So that just gives you an idea of the four main issues that the African elephant is currently facing and has done for quite a while. Now I want to just give you a little bit of a geography lesson. We talk about Africa, often as a country. It's actually a really, really large continent. And to give you some idea of scale when I start talking about African elephant numbers. So it's a huge continent. As you can see, the United States fits comfortably into West Africa, going into Central Africa. China, that's slightly larger, but takes up quite a large part of it. India's here, Eastern Europe, most of the rest of Europe is up here. Japan fits in nicely down there. And then the UK, which is where I was born, is kicked out into Madagascar, which is an island community, so I'm okay with that. So it's a huge, huge continent. I just want you to grasp that before I start talking about numbers. So historically, the African elephant was pretty much throughout the whole of Africa, apart from this white area here. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to why the African elephant wasn't there? Yes, the Sahara Desert. Interestingly, there's been some recent cave paintings and etchings discovered in the Sahara, evidence perhaps of either the communities that have travelled outside of the Sahara in the past and came across elephants and brought that information back, or was the Sahara once upon a time small enough that the African elephant was able to migrate across? It's only recent findings, so for me that's really quite exciting. There are two different colours. This is back from National Geographic back in 1991, and since then these two different subspecies, as they were, the forest elephant, which is this lighter colour, and the bush elephant or savanna elephant, is more commonly known as darker colour, have since become two different species. So this then throws the number of elephants I'm going to start talking about into lower numbers because we now have this species differentiation. So it's more due to slight changes in how they look. They can interbreed, but because of how they look and their adaptations for their certain environments and certain behavioural changes, they have now been classified as two different species. So historically, a long time ago, even before I was born, African elephants ranged over much of the African continent. By 1979, the picture had changed quite dramatically, and we see the blue is where the elephants are occurring. We see large fragmentation of the habitat, and by that I mean over here in West Africa. Populations that are becoming isolated, they can't travel between these populations because of large human populations, and therefore you start beginning to see smaller and smaller populations and the problems of inbreeding, lower genetic diversity, and then if diseases come through, then they have less resistance to these diseases. So these populations are very difficult to conserve long term. I don't think any least important, but very difficult. And the number had dropped to an estimated 1.3 million African elephants. So that sounds quite a lot, doesn't it? Do you think it's a lot? Yeah, it's quite a lot? Even considering the size of Africa? I work and live in Botswana. Now, Botswana is a very sparsely human-populated area. It's the size of Texas, to give you an idea of scale. It has 2 million people. That's very sparsely, but even there, you have more people than in the whole of the African continent back in 1979 of the African elephant. Just in 10 years' time, some of you may remember the ivory crisis of the 80s. I certainly do, and I think it had a really profound effect on me. I was sort of 10 years old then, and I was getting involved in reading the newspaper and watching the news. And there was a big ivory crisis, and in fact, President Moi of Kenya publicly burnt their ivory store, and that really brought into light on a global scale what was going on with the African elephant. Because in just 10 years' time, this had happened. A massive decrease in population, down to 608,000, and again, you can see some of these populations have vanished completely, and you're getting more isolation of these fragmented populations in just 10 years. So there was quite a difficult decade for the African elephant, and like I said, there was huge public outcry globally, and the trade in the illegal ivory was really dampened down, which was fantastic. So the range nowadays is only 14% of Africa. This is reduced quite dramatically. This is from data in 2007, reduced by 32% just in 5 years from 2002. And also importantly, just 31% of African elephants reside in protected areas. So we often think of conservation as national parks and game reserves, but conservation really has to go beyond those borders and has to include the population living outside these game reserves and national parks. And that's not just elephants, I think that's all wildlife. I've recently just been fortunate enough to have a holiday in Canada, and Canada has a lot of wildlife, bears and elk and moose. I didn't see moose, which I was hugely disappointed with, but I did see elk and I saw bear. And there you have very nice national parks, but also you have communities having to live alongside wildlife outside of these protected areas. And those conservation areas or conservation issues have to be addressed outside these national parks as well as inside. So this population decline has been quite dramatic in these 10 years. Now a little bit of audience participation. How many do you think are left today? 220,000. Higher or lower? Sorry, someone said half. So about 300,000. Yeah? Anyone else? One more guess? 100,000. Thankfully, it's a little bit better than all those guesses, I'm pleased to report. In 2007, we estimated we had about 470,000 elephants left in the wild. So this is from that report. And the colours indicate those populations. So red is basically they've lost all their elephants in recent times. Green are the good areas, I guess, you'd say. And these two countries, Tanzania and Botswana, are the only countries with over 100,000 elephants within their borders. Now, I say borders, elephants don't need passports, they go across borders. Or they don't have passports, let's say. They'd be really big, and I'm not sure where they'd put them. So mainly the African elephant population is concentrated down in southern Africa with nearly 300,000. And Botswana, which is where we started our work and concentrate our work, has an estimated 130,000 African elephants. So it's the largest population left in the world, intact population left in the world, and therefore it's fundamentally a really, really important population to sustain and conserve. So I touched on the illegal killing back in the 80s. Unfortunately, it's resurging, and we're now in a second ivory crisis. There was a study done way back in 2008. It said the mean poaching rate was at 8%. Now, elephants are very, very slow reproducers, and they can only really reproduce at 6% at maximum time, so when times are really, really good. So the maths is fairly simple. At that rate, we're losing 2%. If that continues, all of us here today could see the extinction of the African elephant in the wild. Now, I know that's not a world I'm prepared to live in, and I'm sure many of you are not as well. That's a horrifying statistic as far as I'm concerned. So the current hotspots are Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, and Central Africa. There's been many, many raids with illegal ivory being caught as they're trying to leave port, but also now through DNA analysis, we can actually track where the ivory is coming from. So we've got a really good idea of where it's coming from. Now we need to obviously stop where it's coming from. Or more importantly, I guess, stop the market. So stop the destination. If there's no desire for ivory, then there's not going to be this illegal killing. It is unfortunately spreading into southern Africa. Southern Africa has really kind of done well when it comes to conservation of African elephant, as you saw from that map previously, but also has never been under a huge amount of pressure when it comes to poaching. But the economics are very easy. If there's a demand for ivory and the other populations are decreasing, Botswana has 130,000 elephants and not very many people to protect them, then unfortunately they're going to see it as an easy game. And just in the last couple of months, 10 male elephants were shot in one of our national parks. So it is coming, unfortunately, and we're doing our best to stop it. The main market is China. However, there are very active markets in Europe and America. In fact, there was a raid recently in New York City in the jewelry quarter where illegal ivory was found. So the markets are out there. I guess the take-home message is don't be a part of that market and don't buy ivory. There are some graphic images coming up, and I see there are some younger audience members, so parents, you may want to advise to look away. But I think it's important that we illustrate the price that the elephants pay. And unfortunately, whilst many people believe that elephants' ivory is harvested from live ivory, that's not the case. The elephant pay the ultimate price. This is a market in West Africa, a modern-day picture. So the ivory market is there, it's active, not just in China and Europe and America, it's active in mainland Africa as well. This is not legal ivory, and it's not legally able to sell it in West Africa, but the laws are being flouted blatantly. So, Elephants for Africa, how did we come about, what are we trying to do, and how are we trying to achieve that? Well, after I started my PhD in 2002, and whilst I wanted to get a PhD, it wasn't my main aim. My main aim was to start a sustainable and long-term research program on the African elephant. African elephants are very long-lived, very, very similar to humans. They can live for 60, 70 years, and very, very slow reproducers. So if you want to understand them, you need to have, in my opinion, long-term research programs. So we officially registered, as Martha mentioned, in 2007. and we're funded by grants and donations. Now, our vision is a world in where humans and elephants can coexist. It's a big vision, it's out there, but you've got to aim high. That's it. If you aim for the moon, you'll reach the stars. So there you go. I'm aiming to reach the stars. And we do this through conservation, through research and education. We believe it's really important to have both and to take the research findings to where they can be really applied locally, as well as to the international community. So our education is focused at the moment on youngsters and at tertiary level. So Elefun is our weekend activity for local children living alongside wildlife. So many, particularly in Botswana, live outside of these wildlife areas, but rarely, if at all, get the opportunity to actually go and see their wildlife. Their experiences with wildlife is generally in a conflict situation, elephant coming in, eating their food, lion coming, eating their cattle, and on occasion, people getting injured or killed as well. So it's a very, very negative relationship they often have with what is fundamentally their wildlife. And if we're going to see wildlife such as elephants and lions into the future, then that conservation really has to come from within those countries that are home to this wildlife. So children from local communities spend a weekend with us learning about elephants, fundamentally, and other wildlife. We just want to give them that experience of seeing wildlife in a non-conflict situation and hopefully enjoy that experience, and also get the opportunity to look at options of a career in conservation. Now, Botswana has a very, very strong economy. Just after independence from the UK, unsurprisingly, sorry about that, they discovered diamonds. Good timing on Botswana's behalf. I think if they'd found diamonds before independence, we may have been more reluctant to give up. And that has really given a really good foundation, both for education, but also for wildlife conservation. Now, they're very savvy and they realise that diamonds is a non-renewable resource, and so they're diversifying, and they really want wildlife to play and ecotourism to play a much bigger role in their economy. So at the moment, there's a big drive for that. So in the future, there'll be more roles within wildlife conservation, more guides will be needed, other workers within the ecotourism sector as well. So the people that run these weekends are all Botswana, so it's all in the local language of Setswana, and the guides volunteer their time and they get really, really involved. And what I was surprised about, I knew this was the right thing to do, but I was really surprised about the feedback that the researchers got. It was actually really, really rewarding for us as well as for the kids to see the delight on these kids' face as they dig around in poo and discover things. And it's really, really rewarding for us as well as for them, hopefully. At the tertiary level, we have a scholarship fund for local students. Now, at the moment, it's restricted to Botswana. It's called the Boyce Scholarship, Boyce Zero Scholarship, and named after Boyce and Zero. These are two passionate conservationists from Botswana who I was very fortunate to meet at the very beginning of my career, and they taught me a lot. Not just about conservation, but how to find my way out of a lost situation, which occurred quite regularly, how to get unstuck, which occurred quite regularly, and how to change tyres, which again occurred quite regularly. In fact, Zero here is mending one of those tyres that I recently spoke about. They unfortunately passed away much too soon and were taken away from Botswana. And so in their honour, we named it the Boyce Zero Conservation Scholarship Fund. And it's fundamentally for tertiary level education to enable them to get a higher degree in conservation biology. And our first student, Mpwenga Fafili, is here, being an elephant researcher all over the place, and he has had huge success. In fact, I can tell you hot off the press that he recently graduated with a master's degree from the University of Bristol, and we're very, very proud of him. And not only did he get a master's degree, but he has developed over time some important skills to become a conservation leader for Botswana, about communication. When I first met him, he was very, very shy. He's now very much more outgoing. He'll happily replace me today and have given you a talk with confidence. So we're very proud of him. I had to put the British phone box in there because also there's a lot of cultural exchange. Botswana has got a very good education system, but they only have one university, so there's limited opportunities for him to network. So we try and get the students through a British university or an international university where the opportunities for networking are much, much more, and then he can go back to the local university and get those connections going again. So he's now our new project leader in Botswana. He's starting up our new project there, and we are now looking for funds for the next student, and we'll start looking for that next student next year, hopefully. And also other education is talks, conferences, and media. Coming here today is another outreach education. It's important that not only is the information shared in Botswana, but globally as well. We try to communicate not only through scientific papers, but through local media, radio and television as well. So I'm going to just give you some idea of our research findings on male elephants. That really is my passion, and my passion is behavioral ecology. So why male elephants make certain decisions, how they interact with their environment, and why they choose to do things. But why study male elephants? Surely females are much more interesting. They have their babies, they're running around, they're lots more fun. Well, that's what a lot of people thought, and actually male elephants are often misunderstood, definitely misrepresented. I won't even try and say that again. I think you'll get what I mean. And we actually know very, very little about male elephants. But male elephants are the main crop raiders when it comes to social economic problems. And fundamentally, if we don't have males, we're not going to have baby elephants. So we need to understand both females and male elephants. And males have a very, very different life from females. Females are born into a herd, grow up that herd, and grow old with that herd. Males go through independence at adolescence. Again, very, very similar to humans. Adolescence comes upon them about 14 on average. Between the ages of 10 and 19, they're going to go through independence. And by that, they leave their herd. They become independent of their herd, but also they leave the area that they know so well. So it's a massive change that they're going through. And it's that change which I'm interested in, and male social ecology. So this is some data from my Ph.D, and we collared 5 young males, so between the ages of 10 and 19, and wanted to see what kind of area they were using. Now the Okavango Delta, which is this unusual shape here, is an oasis for wildlife. Pretty much Botswana is a desert, but up in the northern area there is this lush area, and that's because water comes down from Angola and feeds into this delta system, bringing with it important nutrients as well as the water. And that sustains most of Botswana's wildlife. And the different colours represent the different seasons. So the rainy season, if I take Abu 6 as an example, vast areas are utilised in the rainy season. It's because pans fill up and they can get into further areas and utilise those areas. And particularly here, it's Mopani, which is a very, very important species for elephants out there, tree species. And here in the dry season, they retract quite considerably. And interestingly enough, they retracted to the area where we collared them. And it's thought that perhaps that's their actual herd area, so that it's important that they know where water is going to be available. Now, when we compare this data to other populations, this is more akin to the Namibian desert elephant. Now, they have to migrate between food and water resources. And it's, the average was 4,500 square kilometres. Other populations of African elephant are much, much smaller. And the theory is, well, underneath all this lush green vegetation, it is fundamentally still a desert. So there may be minerals that are scarce and they have to travel around. Secondly, these are all young males. So they're going through that exploratory time. They're leaving their herd, they're becoming independent. They may not have yet settled on where they're going to be when they're a lot older. And thirdly, maybe it simply represents a population of elephants that can move. They're not restricted by humans and human development. They have this space and they're able to utilise it. An idea of scale, the Okavango Delta covers 15,000 square kilometres. I'm not sure what that is in miles, sorry. It's big. I should have done that. Now the behavioural ecology aspects of it, I wanted to know, well, how are they interacting with other males in particular and who they're interacting with. So greeting is a very, very important, I'm sure you've seen your elephants do this as well. Very important aspects of elephant ecology. So they're fundamentally finding out who's who. And this is a greeting ceremony. You've got a young male here, this is an older female and her calf. And these two individuals actually know each other and they haven't seen each other for a long, long time. And this greeting ceremony actually lasted a long time, lots of rumbling. It was very emotional, not just for the elephants, but for me as well. And you can see that this young elephant has its trunk up to the mouth of the other one. And it's thought that there's Bets Rasmussen, who's an amazing elephant biologist who, again, unfortunately, has passed. She found this gland, palatial gland, I think it was called, if I remember correctly, and it continuously loses cells, and it's thought that actually that may be how they're getting individual recognition information. It's an interesting theory, but she did ask, when I remember giving a similar talk, she did ask, is it always to the left or the right-hand side of the mouth? And yes, it is. It's never underneath. It's always to one side, interestingly enough. And what we found is that greeting is affected by age. So these young males that are going through independence and leaving their herd and joining a whole new social network, elephants they've never ever met before are spending a lot of time greeting. So they greeted significantly more than these older elephants. These elephants that have been around 50, 60 years already know Bill and Mark and Matthew and all the rest of it. They don't need to greet them quite as enthusiastically. But when it came to sparring, now by this I mean, gentle sort of playground antics, pushing each other around, to full fighting. It's really, really important, and age did not affect the rate of sparring. Males of all ages spend a lot of time and energy sparring. And also season didn't affect sparring. So even in the drier season, when they're all rather skinny and energy's at a low, they will still put energy into sparring. Because if you're a male elephant, you want to be a big, strong male elephant. Because big, strong male elephants win the ladies. It's fundamentally, that's it, that's simple. I can walk away now, actually. You've learned all you need to know about male elephants. But that's what they're doing. And they have this protracted adolescence. African elephants and I think it's blue whales have the longest adolescence for mammals. So they go through puberty at 14, they become independent, they are ready for the ladies. The ladies definitely aren't ready for them, and the big males aren't ready to let these young males have their way. So these young males are, God, can you imagine? 10 to 15 years of adolescence. I can't imagine that. That was painful enough for how long it lasted for me. So 10 to 15 years, they're out there, kind of on the outskirts, trying to be that big independent male. So spending a lot of time feeding and bulking up, a lot of time fighting and trying to work out who's who. Because they have this very, in Ambercelli, they have worked out the hierarchy. And if you're number one, then you're going to father most of the young calves coming through. So that's what drives male elephants' behavior. So then I looked at the association index, and all I mean by that is who are they hanging out with? And what we found, so it's a very simple graph. You have young males here, are different age groups, 10 to 15, down to these 36 plus males, so these oldest age group. And again down the bottom, so 10 to 15, over to these larger, older bulls that have been around for a long time. And what we found is that all males prefer to hang out with similar aged males. So these 36-year-old males here are hanging out with 36-year-old males. It gets a little bit complicated here and amongst these young males, but fundamentally they're hanging out with other adolescent males. So these males that have left, become independent, and having to learn a whole new social network. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And this is a group of young males at the back of the herd. So they haven't gone through independence, but even when they're in the herd, they're choosing to hang out with the boys. They understand each other. They know what they're on about. I'm not that interested in females at this time. They're off doing girly things. The boys are off doing boy things. Or at least they think they are. They think they've gone through independence. They don't need mum. They don't need the dance anymore. But the number of times I've come around the corner, given them a little bit of a shock, they hadn't realised I was there, they've gone running straight home to the herd. Squealing, tails between their knees, between their legs, ears out, terrified. So they'll come up to you and give you a good old trumpet and go, oh, you're not backing off, I'm going to run away. So yes, give them a few years and then they won't back off. Then I want to look at the effective age of nearest neighbour. So they're choosing to be in a group of males of similar age, but who are they choosing to be next to? It's like going into a classroom. You'll generally choose to be next to your friend or someone you know, rather than a complete stranger. And what I expected is, well, they'd hang out next to their same age group, because that's who they're choosing to be with, and also that they're sparring with and who they're greeting with. Well, we found the exact opposite. And male elephants of all ages prefer to be closest to these big old bulls. Now that's interesting, because the theory until recently, and I'm talking about our work, but there's lots of other people out there researching elephants and doing research on males, so I'm sort of bringing everyone's information together here. It's thought that once they've gone through independence, they're pretty much solitary, and they'll come and find the females as and when they want. So really we can fundamentally do what we want with them, because we're not going to have an effect if we take one out, because they're not social, so no one's going to miss them. Well, here we find that males of all ages are choosing to hang out with these big old males. These big males that we deem as trophy individuals, past their mating prime, We can have someone come along, pay a lot of money and shoot them. That's fine, because they don't have a role to play in male elephant society. Well, unfortunately they do. They have a big role to play in male elephant society. So it's being aware of these relationships will enable us to conserve them better. So we can say, okay, we know they have that, so we need to manage them a bit better. And if we are going to take out individuals, we need to know that there will be knock-on consequences and have an idea of what they're going to be. So adolescence is a really important period, not just for us as humans, but for other animals out there, and particularly for adolescent males. They're leaving their herd, they're becoming independent. It's a very high-risk strategy, this. They're leaving at quite a young age. Although they're much taller than me, and probably about as tall as your adult female elephants at this stage, they're still quite vulnerable. And there are prides of lions that have learned to take young male elephants out. In Amboseli, only 30% of young males will reach their 30th birthday. So it's quite a high-risk strategy being a male elephant out there. It's a highly social period, so they're leaving their herd, becoming independent. They've got to know who's who in male society. They want to know who's the nice elephants and who's the bad elephants, but also who's dominant to them, so they can avoid a big conflict with them. It's a very big price to pay if you get into a fight and you're going to come off at worst, fatally injured. So they're getting to know the older bulls, and for want of a better term, I use the term mentoring. There's definitely must be some information transfer. And if you're a young male elephant, as I've already discussed, they want to become big and strong. Now you've left your herd area, all the areas you know, all the foods you know potentially, you're going into a new area. What's the quickest and easiest way of learning the good food sources? Follow those big males that have been around for 40, 50 years. They've proven to you that they know where good food is. So you pretty much just follow them around. The big males get a little bit irritated at times, but normally they're okay. And they certainly don't like sharing the palm nuts. In the Delta we have palm trees, and only the big males can shake them and get the palm nuts down. It's quite funny to watch. Oh, I wish I'd included a little video. I've got this video of a male elephant shaking, and when he knows the nuts are coming down, he kind of hunches up, because he knows it's really going to hurt, but the rewards are really going to be worthwhile. So it's quite fun to watch. And then the young males kind of get their trunk in and try and get them. The big males don't like that at all. Anyway, they're also learning their social position, and also, of want of a better term, their social etiquette. So what does it take to be a male elephant? And again, we always thought, well, they leave their herd, they become independent, that's it, they're fully grown, they're male elephants, they know what they're doing. Well, through trial and error, we've learned that this is not the case. And in the 1980s, there was a very good case of this trial and error, in that a lot of the land in South Africa was turning from farming back into wildlife areas, which is fantastic. And they did that by taking animals from other areas and introducing them. And they introduced these young elephants that had been, they used to cull their elephants in Africa and keep in South Africa and keep the babies. So they introduced a lot of babies, they all grew up together. And then when these young males sort of hit adolescence and went through puberty, they're like, well, hey, party time. And they thought, party time, big time, and went out there. The young females weren't interested. They were like, well, you're not big and strong enough, and I definitely don't fancy you. And so these young elephants started trying to mate with the rhinos, next biggest large grey thing. Yeah, a little bit confused. And unfortunately, the rhinos didn't know what to do, didn't act accordingly, and they ended up killing 48 rhino in one game reserve. It's a huge loss to rhino. I'm sure you've all heard of the plight of the rhino currently happening. And so Joyce Poole, another elephant biologist, went down there and said, well, you haven't got any big adult bulls. So they immediately introduced some big adult bulls. These young males that had come into premature must, which is when male elephants mate. I believe your male elephant is in must at the moment. They immediately dropped out of this unusual delinquent behaviour stopped. So from those early 80s, we realised that these big old bulls are not just surplus to demands. And also they're learning about the area, very important. So how does this affect conservation? Well, when it comes to culling and hunting and taking out individuals, there will be an effect. There will be a knock-on effect. You have to be aware of this if that is a management decision. When it comes to translocation, moving elephants around, which is becoming an important part when it comes to genetic diversity of these smaller populations in particular, it may be these young males are the best ones to move because they're expecting change. They're expecting to go into a new area. Often we spend a lot of money moving an elephant. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of US dollars here, and they immediately come back. In fact, in Canada, I heard about a male bear that was moved 250 kilometers. Within 2 days, he was back in Lake Louise. So you kind of think you've made a solution, but animals, it's really important that they know where they are and they have this local information. It's like moving you to a whole new city, not giving you a map, not giving you a bus pass, and you have to find your way around. It's scary, and so they would rather come back. Removal of fences and transfrontier parks. So here in Botswana and these surrounding countries, we have the Kaza Transfrontier National Park, Peace Park, a massive undertaking. I can't think of any other countries that would work together towards conservation on quite this scale so that animals can freely move between these international borders. So it's been 10 years, so what are we doing now? Well, we really want to become Elephants for Africa. I've spoken about Botswana, and I love Botswana, and Botswana is my home, but we are Elephants for Africa, so how can we move on as a charity and really provide what we hope will be useful conservation tools for the future? We're going to have an increased emphasis on local capacity building and fundamentally be the catalyst for local ownership to find local solutions to local problems. As I said before, conservation really has to come from within, I believe. So in Botswana, we're moving down to Makgadikgadi Pans. And this is fundamentally because the elephants are moving down there. There's been a massive expansion of range of elephants in recent times. The Okavango Delta is having massive floods, which is up here, and this has pushed water down the Pateti, the river that we were told would never flow again. So they built a nice electric fence down the river here. The river did flow again. The electricity doesn't work. So the Makgadikgadi National Park has this boundary of the river, and the elephants are now going through into community lands, into ranch land, and the cattle are also moving into the national park. So it's a bit of a hot spot when it comes to conflict, and from my point of view, it's only male elephants that are coming down here at the moment. So from a social ecology point of view, it's very, very interesting. And also we're seeing very, very large groups of male elephants. There's been reports of 100 male elephants strong. I've yet to see it, but my friend who's a zebra researcher has seen it. So what are they getting from these big, big meetings of male elephants? Historically, from historical photographs, aerial photographs, we know that they have done this in the past, so it may just be a natural phenomena. That's human-elephant conflict, a shortcut for that, and more involvement with the communities, because this river is the boundary, and there's a lot of communities living right alongside the wildlife. In South Africa, we're starting a project looking at husbandry. There's a large captive elephant industry there, started mainly from the culls and keeping the elephants and selling them, the baby elephants, but also people trying to do the best, rescuing baby elephants, rescuing young orphaned elephants. And there's a big tourist industry, which you can see here. A lot of people will pay a lot of money to perhaps go on an elephant-backed safari or meet an elephant up close and personal. And what this young lady here is doing is looking at the effect of tourism on their welfare. Are there any minimum or maximum numbers we need to consider? And giving this information, hopefully to start some legislation to improve the welfare and has some standards for these captive elephants there. And also improve welfare globally, not just for captive elephants, but for wild elephants as well. She's doing some immuno studies so we can understand a little bit more about how they deal with stress. And then here, one of the main reasons that finds me here in St. Louis, I want to say St. Louis all the time. In Botswana, our local beer is St. Louis. So, you know, it's a good name, good connotations there. The mutual area of interest is Ethiopia. And I was recently contacted by Sintaheyu Wakineng here, who's a local university lecturer. He has a master's degree. The university and himself are very, very keen that he gets a Ph.D. so that he can then have students of his own and expand the project. And he really will be a conservation leader, not just in that university. He's already done a lot of research already. So he approached us to come under the umbrella of Elephants for Africa. And he's working here in the Horn of Africa in Babili Elephant Sanctuary. It's a very isolated population, very small, only about 250 elephants. But it's a really, really important ecosystem because it's fundamentally stopping the desert spreading any further in the area into communal lands. Unfortunately, the people are very, very reliant on the resources there. They take a lot of firewood out. They do take local meat as well. And so the aim of the project is to conserve the area, not just for the elephants, but actually for the people that rely on the area too. Recent news from Babili Elephant Sanctuary is that there's been 6 elephants killed in the last 3 months. Majority for poaching, for ivory. And as you can see, these ones still have their ivory, and these were conflict elephants, elephants that had gone into croplands and had been killed because of that. There are only 34 ranges covering 2,700 miles. I did that one. I converted that one this morning. And they are very, very willing, very noble people, but I went to their office and their resources are bits of paper written, all the species. So even if they see an interesting bird or interesting plant, they're desperate to know what it is, but they don't have the resources to look it up. And they're fantastic people. When I was there, they couldn't even get out in the park because all their cars had broken down. So we hope to build a relationship and enable them to do the job they want to do, and also develop the research program there with the centre. He's the lead guy there. And in 2010, here we go, some land was given to a private company engaged in the conservation of castor. Now this sanctuary was designated by Haile Selassie, a very, very important man in Ethiopia's history. And we really, really would like to get national park status, because then there's more money coming in from the budget and also more protection for the wildlife and for the land itself. So that's what he'll be starting his PhD in September, and we're helping support him that way. And that's why I'm here to talk to Martha about our mutual interest, Ethiopia. I'm new to the area, you know, how can I work best? Can we work together on these kind of things? So I've spoken a lot, and I know it's getting late, so I'm gonna wrap up fairly soon. And I've been given a lot of thought. You have a lot of time on aeroplanes when you're sat cramped in amongst people. And I've seen a lot of, well, my journey has been full of a lot of excitement, a lot of joy, a lot of sadness, and a lot of grief when it comes to my own personal journey with elephants. You get to know the individuals, and it's very sad when one of them is taken from you. And also the people that I've met along the way that have helped me get where I am. Some of them are no longer with. So there's sadness and happiness, as we all know, as our journey through life. But we also find inspiration. And whilst humans, when they do this kind of thing, upset me, they also inspire me. And I'm from the United Kingdom, if you hadn't guessed by the accent. And recently, we've had the Olympics. And they come around every 4 years. And they're, for me, a massive inspiration. They inspire generations to come to go and achieve their dreams, not just in athletics, but if you meet an athlete or you hear them on the radio and they're going, this has always been my dream and I've achieved my goal by either being an Olympian or winning or coming second or third, just participating. It's a real inspiration. I was really inspired by the Olympics, and perhaps more so by the Paralympics and what they have to overcome to achieve their dreams. And so the reason I put this up here is that we are often the problem when it comes to human-elephant conflict and conservation. We're also the solution. And if we can come together to celebrate athletes and what they can achieve every 4 years, I know that we can come together and sort out the problems for the African elephant and the people that we are asking to live alongside them. And this gave me a sense of belonging, actually. I mentioned earlier that my childhood was partly in Pakistan. Well, I've pretty much moved all around the world and spent very, very little time in Botswana, in the UK, and more time outside the UK. Yeah, I'm still fundamentally British, and it makes me realise that whatever it is that makes us a nationality is quite strong, isn't it? And that, alongside the Jubilee, gave me a real sense of belonging. And so I came up with my jubilant elephant in celebration of the Queen's Jubilee this year, Diamond Jubilee, and also the Olympics, and also Britain and the world getting behind elephants and conservation. And we have some of those badges. They're little pin badges. We have some of them for sale this evening. They're $3 each. It would really help my suitcase if they all went. And we have some of our black EFA. I don't know if you noticed the elephant logo at the top. We have some of them as well. So it just tells me, well, I sum up to thank you for coming. I really appreciate you coming and spending your evening with me. You can stay in touch with us. You can visit our website, which I'll warn you now is being updated. It's a bit out of date, but I'm busy working on it now, and it should be new and flashy and doing all sorts of singing and dancing things soon. You can follow us on Facebook and through Twitter, and you can sign up for our newsletter as well. We have a sign up here. It's just quarterly. It just gives you a summary of what we've been up to in that last 4 months to enable you to sort of stay in touch with our news with all our projects. Obviously, financials are great. If you've got, sums of money you don't know what to do with, then send them our way. But we all know we're in a bit of a mess at the moment when it comes to our economics. So there are other ways. You don't need to make a financial contribution at all. There are other ways you can support. You can spread the word. But fundamentally, my take-home message is be a conscious consumer. We live in a global society, and every decision we make in the West does have an effect elsewhere in the world. I feel very privileged to have such choice, and I can have the latest gadgets and the latest fads, but my choices have an effect on Africa and on Asia, because the raw resources that make all these things come from there, and that means less space for elephants. So just be a conscious consumer, and you're already being a conservationist. So I thank you again for your time. It's been a pleasure to be here. I've got a whole other day tomorrow to enjoy the zoo and meet other people. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Yeah, I saw someone reading it on the plane, and I have yet to buy an edition. I need to buy an edition. Yeah, the estimates are 100 to 200 elephants a day are being slaughtered currently. So it's totally, totally unsustainable. So yeah, you've done the maths. It's not looking good. And that's why we need to stop it now. Yeah.
On some of your photos, you were had the elephants with their ears flared out. Was that always a warning that stay away, I'm going to charge you?
No. Lots of we identify them through their ear notches. So a lot of my ID shots, I wait till they flap. So they're cooling off. They use their ears to cool off. They often listen, and obviously if I'm making a noise, they'll go like that. But rarely do they raise it in alarm, because we try and respect their distance. But yeah, that's a really good point. They do often give you a warning with their ears out to make them look larger. But we try and get a picture from the left, from the right, and then with their ears out to identify them. But they're often flat, particularly the hot days. So that's my perfect timing. Yes?
With all the competition for the males with the breeding, do you have any idea the percentage of males that never breed?
Not where we are, no. I think up in Kenya it was more than initially thought, because it was thought this hierarchy, but you do get these sneaky matings. So whilst the dominant male's off with one of the females that's in estrus, there may be another female in estrus, and then there's big competition for that. And you often do see this sneaky mating. If the dominant male's busy trying to chase off any other suitors that are of his size, a 20-year-old or 25-year-old is less of an issue to him, so they often get a sneaky mating in. But generally only with the younger females, inexperienced females, because older females have learned that actually I'm going to be pregnant for 2 years. I'm then going to have to feed this thing for 3 years. That's a big investment. So they really are quite selective on who they are mating with. But I think, I'm trying to think of the numbers, I think it was 40% of the population up in Kenya were getting, of these mature males were getting offspring. So it's not quite as bad as it looks. So. Yes?
How trainable are African elephants as compared to Asian?
That's a really good question. Oh, sorry, I'll repeat the question. He asked how trainable were African elephants compared to Asian elephants? How trainable in the captive environment? Get the question now? There was Asia has a long history of training elephants. So for a long, long time, it was thought that African elephants couldn't be trained, full stop, that was it. And what they found is actually elephants, not from my personal experience, but from who I've spoken to, African elephants are easier to train than Asian elephants, particularly the males, when it comes to comparing them. But that's only from talking to other trainers and all the rest of it. So for a long, long time, it was thought that Africans weren't trainable at all. And that's purely through, my personal belief, through history and the relationship that Asia has with their elephants. They've been used them long term in logging and also in their religious ceremonies, whereas in Africa they don't have that relationship on a spiritual or on an agricultural level in the past. So it was in the early 1900s, the Belgian Congo, Prince Albert, or whatever his name was, I think, decided that he was going to train the African elephant. So that was the first documentation, I believe, of African elephants, used in the logging industry again. So it doesn't really answer your question, but I don't have personal experience. But I think there's some keepers here. They may be able to help. Yes, someone can add there.
We have two at Grand Farm. They're highly trainable.
Highly trainable. There you go, highly trainable. Thank you. Yes?
Do males go back to their own family groups to breed?
No. It's believed not. Obviously, inbreeding avoidance is very much sought after. But if you have got a small restricted population, then it's inevitable, unfortunately. But that's probably why they physically leave their herd area to avoid inbreeding. And also, I think there is individual recognition and memory. So if you're an elephant growing up with your mother, with your aunts, and with your siblings and cousins, I really do think they have the memory and capacity to remember those individuals. So they do come back. I'm not saying that once they leave, that's it. They do come back, and they'll often pass each other, and they'll greet, and they'll do all they do. But inbreeding avoidance is kind of a geographical thing as well as a physical thing. So, but that's the problem of these isolated populations. If there is no option, then they're going to do it, unfortunately. Yeah.
I was actually interested in the elephant part. Are they treated poorly generally?
No. From my experience, I've seen quite a few. They're trained through positive reinforcement. As you've seen, it's a very open contact situation. And they don't have that relationship as in Asia, where it generally is one elephant for a very, very long time. They'll swap those around. But what I've seen is very, very positive reinforcement. They start them from a very young age. There are a few, I've not seen it, but I know that there's been a few circumstances where they've taken older individuals from the wild because they don't want to wait till they grow up, and then unfortunately there has been quite negative training involved there, and that was in the South African press and soon stopped. But there are lots of individually and privately owned elephants coming and growing up in Africa, in South Africa in particular, and there isn't legislation, so we're not fully aware of what's going on. So that kind of answers what I've seen is very positive reinforcement, but I'm sure, unfortunately, there is some negative reinforcement as well that goes on. Yes?
At various times in a culture's development, people can be easily in favor of or against conservation because of money and gain. Do you talk a little bit about the level of resentment or receptivity to this people?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There is a huge economic drive in Africa for development. You know, they've seen the West, they want to have that. I mean, why wouldn't they? The majority of the population is living on or below the poverty line, and they have natural resources that they can sell. And at the moment, they are selling them. And there is, in Botswana, I speak from Botswana, that's my main area of expertise, my knowledge, I guess. There is large resentment among the local communities. They feel that their government is conserving for wildlife and not for them. A lot of the schools and clinics that are being built in the villages are because of wildlife. Now, the information that is missing is that we have these resources, we have this infrastructure because we have wildlife. And that's the communication that's broken down. And one thing I didn't touch on, it's a project we're hoping to start up soon, it's in the sort of trial stages, is Botswana has a very sparsely population of humans. So the difficulty is getting information to them in a timely manner, because there are compensation schemes out there for crop raiding and for cattle that are taken. so that if they are having economic losses, they're financially compensated if they're protecting their crop and their cattle. But that information is not getting where it needs to be. And there's also money out there to start initiatives in ecotourism. They really want communities to have their own ecotourism initiatives, so they're not just being driven past and the big tourist camps getting the money. So those initiatives are there, but the communities aren't getting that information, and that's where the resentment comes in. So they do feel that the government is governing for wildlife and not for people. So what we'd like to get off the ground is a radio program. At the end of the Second World War in the UK, we had a program launched called the Archers, which is a radio program, and it was fundamentally run by the Ministry of Agriculture to improve agriculture output at a time when we really needed it. And it's on those similar lines we'd like. So we've got timely information about, well, elephants are moving now, you really have to start protecting your crops. The lions are going to be starting moving, you really need to protect your cattle. This is a new initiative, this is a more sustainable way. There's government money you can apply for, but through a storyline. So it's an enjoyable means of getting information across, because Botswana is a very verbal history. They communicate and pass their information through stories. And so radio is actually a really important way of potentially getting that information out there. Very few people have access to television. Very few people have access to written material. The majority of the Botswana population have access to radios. So we're working with the Department of Wildlife National Park on the concept at the moment. So yes, that's a long answer to your question, but yes, there is resentment, absolutely. And yeah, like you say, well, you in the West, you've destroyed all your wildlife and you're doing very, very well, so why should we protect ours? And fundamentally, we're going to be asking, and we are asking them to do exactly that. And how do we kind of not teach them the area of their ways, but kind of show them the area of their ways, that this is a natural resource that is sustainable and will continue to bring you wealth. And that's what Botswana is trying to do. It's trying to increase the GDP contribution of ecotourism at the moment. So it's the best I can answer it anyway. Yes?
So are there ecotourism companies that are owned by Botswanans?
Yes. There are. The majority are owned by expats, and again, the government is trying to tackle that. There is a CBRNM, which is a community-based natural resource system, and that is trying to get more Botswana involved with ecotourism. And give them the training, because it's very well, here you go, here's a camp, run it, but that's running a business, that's putting money and profits back in. So it's not just, it's about building those skills up within the communities so they can do it. We're seeing massive urbanization of communities as well. Young people are going to the cities. So you've got a lot of older people that are left in the communities. And again, the government's trying to readdress that by giving more opportunities outside of the urban areas. So, yes?
So more wildlife, so more elephants are lost to poachers or hunters or people that just want to keep the nuisance away. That's what you want. And did I remember any effort to take the ivory so that it would not be valuable? Do I remember anything like that ever?
I'll go with the second one first. I don't think so. What they do with the illegal trade is they stamp it, the ivory tusk. But unfortunately, once it's cut into little pieces, then they can't distinguish it. So that's when they DNA trace it. But obviously, that takes time and resources. But I don't know of any tainting of ivory, no. And then your first question was, I've already forgotten it. Oh yeah, who's taking the main? On a continental scale, the main threat is poaching at the moment, the illegal ivory trade. Second and third is lack of space and conflict. In Botswana, the majority of elephants are killed currently through problem animal control, so those that are breaking fences or crop raiding. Secondly would be legal hunting, trophy hunting, and thirdly would be poaching at the moment. But like I say, we're seeing an influx of poaching incidents at the moment.
So there's legal hunting? Is that what you mean?
Yes, there is legal hunting in Botswana.
There's not enough zoos or institutions who want these animals alive that mitigate against that?
What, the problem animals or the hunting? The hunting, the trophy. Well, the trophy hunting, they're after big male elephants. And male elephants in captivity are a difficult commodity to keep. I think Martha will agree with me on this. They're very, very social, as we're learning now, but majority of male elephants are often kept in solitary conditions. So from a welfare perspective, that's very, very difficult. And also, they're just much, much bigger. You need stronger enclosures. And how do you train them, and how do you give them the stimulation of a social environment which they're not able to have in certain conditions in captivity? And also, what drives the trophy industry is economics. The trophy permit, I believe, is sold for $10,000 US in Botswana. And that's just for the trophy. And then the safari industry, the hunter will charge a daily rate, generally about $2,000 a day, minimum 21-day safari. So there's lots of money. I don't know if you heard about the King of Spain recently going out there. His country's in economic ruin. He chooses to go on an elephant hunt. So he has stepped down as the WWF representative for Spain. So there was a big hoo-ha. The royals were all involved. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's two slightly different things there. I know the North American elephant population is trying to become sustainable within itself because taking adult elephants from the wild is very, very different from bringing young ones up in a captive situation, I believe. They're very wild, they're very used to their own wild existence, and also the expense of bringing them out. I'm sure I know there probably are some places which would like elephants, and yes, I guess if there are problem elephants, that possibly could be an alternative. Yes?
Is there a way of hooking up, say, with school children in Botswana, like a pen pal program?
Again, one of the ideas I didn't touch on. I think that's a brilliant idea. We were trying to get involved with, the British Council has an idea called Connecting Classrooms, which is exactly this. And we'd love that. We would love a class in Botswana that we're working with to get involved with the class here. I think that would be fantastic. And as they grow up, they can exchange ideas, not just about conservation, but about being young in St. Louis and young in Botswana. And my bigger idea was that the school over here could perhaps help with sending books out or get them connected to the internet so then they could start Skyping each other and those kind of things. So yes, would be the short answer.
So who would I contact if I want to try that?
Me. Yeah, I immediately think of someone. There's a library that we're working with closely, and they have a conservation club. And they are just getting connected to the internet, and they've actually just won an award. They're this week in Washington, giving accepting an award because their library is all about community. It's not just about books and learning. They have a homework club, they have a creche, they teach skills such as gardening and cooking, and it's becoming the sort of hub of the community. So I think she'd be a really good person to get you connected with. Well, that would be rude, and there's young people here. So, the most unexpected thing, it would be, I was with 15 male elephants, all different sizes, and I'd been with them for about an hour and a half, and I was following them, trying to ID them, and they were all very, very relaxed, and then suddenly they got spooked by something. I don't know what it was, it may have been me, I'm not sure. And what they did was the older elephants got round the younger ones, and this is what females do. And from that day, I was like, this is much more complex than we thought. And my area of research, my particular area of research is expanding to build on my behavioural research that I've done, is I want to start, well, I am starting, looking at the potential relationships between these individuals and choose to spend time with each other on a cousin basis. So it may be that these young elephants leave their herd together and spend a lot of time together. But also, it wouldn't be beyond belief that there's a much paternal line going on, and actually they can recognize kin, because this behavior is very, very altruistic. You generally only see it in related individuals. It may simply be because they're highly intelligent, that they realize that the young are vulnerable and protecting them. So that's probably the most unexpected, because I'd read about it in females, and the theory is that that's what they do, and males wouldn't do that, and they did it. So yeah, that was unsuspecting. Funny you should say that. I've literally flown in from LA this morning, where I've got a PhD student, and he's just submitted his PhD on the communication of elephants. So he looked at one captive herd, which is used in the elephant bat safari industry. So these elephants are captive, but they have access to other elephants and the natural resources. And he was able to collar them on a daily basis with these collars that record infrasound as well as audible sound. So he's basically done that, looking at how elephants within a herd communicate, who's communicating to who, and trying to see if there's individual voices. Can you ID an elephant by voice alone? So yes, but that's a long answer, but yes. But not me personally. I don't have all the technology understanding, so I just get other people to do it.
I had read something about elephants were able to communicate if there was an electric fence over miles to another group of elephants, like not to come over to that area. Is that correct?
It wouldn't surprise me. Elephants use infrasound, which is sound below our hearing, and has very, very large waves, and that's how the sound travels. And that can be from a physics perspective, 14 kilometers it can travel. We're not sure how much information the elephant gets at that distance, but there's definite studies, I think it was Katie Payne up in Zimbabwe, where they were culling at the time, and they saw that these elephants were busy. They had collared elephants, and they saw through the GPS data that when this area had been culled, they all moved as far away as possible. And just talking to hunters and other people, if there's hunting or a disaster in the area of some description, elephants are gone. So they definitely communicate information, and also I'll be going around one day and there's hundreds of elephants. I'm tripping over elephants, and the next day they've all gone. It's a rainy season. I've heard the storm over there, and that's infrasound, so it wouldn't be surprising if the elephants hear that and move off, or if there's a storm further away if elephants are communicating. Now when it comes to electric fences, male elephants have learnt, I don't know females, but some male elephants have learned that ivory don't conduct electricity, so they short it with their tusk. They'll push the electric wire into the other electric wire and goes psh, and they go through. Or they just get a smaller male elephant and push him through first. So they may not see electric fences as such a problem. Yes?
In Botswana, are they implementing any preventative measures for crop raiding, like planting buffer crops or using beehives or anything like that?
Lucy King, who is done a lot of work on beehive fences, is currently in Botswana at the moment doing some farmer training workshops. And I'll be out there in November for her to do some workshops with the farmers in our area as well. So yes, in short, different solutions for different areas. There's another lady, Anna Songhurst, who's working up on the Panhandle. At the moment, there's very, very little mitigation. And I've driven all the way around the Delta, and you'll see lovely crops with absolutely nothing protecting them. Because until recent times, elephants weren't really roaming that far. And now, suddenly, the farmers are a bit in a panic. It's 1 or 2 generations where they hadn't had to live with elephants. And so the knowledge, the local knowledge on how to prevent that has gone with those 2 generations. So the Department of Wildlife and National Park is kind of catching up, running up, kind of go, okay, we need to do something. So they're beehive fences, chili fences, so the buffer of chili. Lots of elephants don't like chili. They'll come along and taste that, and that's it. In Kenya, I believe lots of elephants love chili, so they don't. I think it's a bit like humans, quite addictive, and once they get a taste for it, that's it. So yes, in short, but it's only now coming in, and we've got quite a lot of work to do to get it up and running. Yes.
One of the things I read about was that it takes elephants years to learn how to use their trunks properly. I can see how complicated that would be. How long does it take for an elephant to learn what it needs to do to survive in the wild?
It takes a long, well, the trunk is, gosh, by about 2, they're using it fully functional, you know, being able to grip and grasp and everything else. Prior to that, they're just practicing helicopter motions and spinning it around and going up to water and doing lots of splashing. But they learn by following, and obviously it's a lot of muscles to try and coordinate and do that. But to survive, yeah, 10, 14 years before a male will go through independence and do a good job of it. And with females, they're learning how to care for their young. I mean, you see it in your herd here. You've got youngsters growing up, and the previous generation of youngsters is helping out with that development. It's amazing what we don't know what level is instinct, what they know already, just as we do when we're born, but also how much is learnt. And in elephants, there's a lot that's learnt. Whereas many mammals will have a year with mum maybe, like bears, I think that's 2 years, and then they're gone. Elephants is a lot younger. It's a big investment. A lot older, sorry. Yes?
I have a question. Are the young males, if when their younger friends are killed, do they mourn or do they show emotion for the males? I know females do.
Yeah, very, very much. The captive elephants I always refer to as the Abu herd. It's a herd that I spent a lot of time with. And part of my research, we released some of the young males in particular when they're going through independence to see if that was a viable management plan for those elephants. And Abu, who was a bit of a movie star, he was in films with Clint Eastwood and all sorts. He unfortunately passed away. He got in a fight with another male elephant and sustained fatal injuries. He passed away. He was pulled out of the boma to rejoin the circle of life. All his herd was brought along, and Kathy, who'd been with him, they were both zoo elephants actually, and went out to become elephant bat safaris. And they had known each other for a very long time, and she would not leave. I mean, tears were running down her face and everything. So there was definitely that bond. And then Mafinyani was our first released young male, and he'd been released a year, and he happened to be in the area when this happened, and he stayed with Abu's body for 3 days and 3 nights. He wouldn't let any hyena, he wouldn't let any lion come through. So that's one example that I've seen. And then secondly, Benny, an older elephant that again passed away, we had the skulls for research purposes and wild elephants as well. And one of the young males that had been released, in fact, the young male in the greeting picture I showed you, he had been released and he came through our camp that day and he smelt all the skulls, because elephants do, if they find some bones or skulls, they'll pick it up, jaws, whatever. And he smelt them all, but when he came to Benny's, he spent 15 minutes smelling him. And that may just be coincidence, it's one very small example, but I think that he knew exactly who that was. And I've seen other male elephants grieve a matriarch that had passed away as well. 2 days, again, spending time with her. 2 adolescent 20-year-olds, so had already gone through independence, but it does make me think, well, perhaps that was their matriarch when they were in the herd. So yes, very much so. Yes?
How much truth is there to the elephant burial ground?
I don't think there's any truth. I think it's coincidence. I think if you're an old elephant, you go to water to be able to drink, and you spend time there because you need that water and you're going to eat that food. So through coincidence, particularly during the dry season, which is when many of the elephants will pass away, there's few water resources, so they just happen to all die in a certain area, would be my interpretation. Otherwise, if there are lots of elephant bones and skulls in an area, it may be the site of a previous poaching incident or some sort of devastation. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you're knowing the current rate of loss for the African elephant, what is your hope, what's your long-term vision about a stable population where there'll be enough habitat? And I mean, what are you hoping for? What do you want there to be here?
Gosh. My ideal world is human-wildlife coexistence. I think it's us as humans appreciating that we're part of an ecosystem. We're not the top thread. We happen to be part of an ecosystem. And we all rely on it, whether it's for our clean water, our fuel, our heat, our cars. We are all part of it. And I think it's just, if everyone could be conscious of that and make us realize that the world is the one world, and it's not renewable, and we need to learn to protect it, and that includes the species. So from elephants in particular, in the past, we as humans coexisted with wildlife. I'd like to see us try and do it again. And I think we can do it, and we're intelligent enough to keep ourselves safe and keep them safe, but we often choose the easy route, and that's to just not live alongside wildlife. I know. Good questions.